I formed my entire existence around sleep. Every other thought I had was about, am I going to sleep tonight? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I going to die? So I would try and control every aspect of my life. And like many of your listeners did, I tried. I mean, the list of things I've tried would probably encompass, 5 to 10 single-spaced pages. It was the most intense suffering, I think, that I have ever endured. Nothing helped. If I would have talked to you 6 months ago, it would have gone a bit differently, because I still would have been absolutely elated that I could sleep again. So today, I don't think about sleep. I sleep very, very well, and almost every night. Yes, there's the occasional night where I'll get 4 or 5 hours, or I'll wake up 5 or 6 times. And it's only through the amount of work I did with self-education and putting that into action that has gotten me to this point. So, if you're a listener and you are struggling, I empathize with you. I can't say that I'm struggling any more or less than you did, but I certainly empathize with you, and I feel for you. And there is a solution out there, and this is only temporary, and you will sleep again. Thank you so much for everything that you do for people who suffer from insomnia. I cannot express to you how grateful I am for you and everything that you do. The videos, the knowledge snippets, the immunity program, working with people, being patient, being kind, being understanding. I'm beside myself with gratitude. So thank you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another special Talking Insomnia episode. We have my namesake Daniel with us. Welcome.
Hello, Daniel.
So nice having you. And you were actually a part of our Insomnia Immunity program for a while, and you've been a follower of the channel. And most pertinently for this episode, you have seen kind of where our teachings lead in terms of leaving the insomnia struggle. So really glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And with that said, just take us from the very beginning. How did you start having trouble with sleep?
Well, first, I just wanted to personally thank you for everything that you do for people who struggle with sleep. It is, you are a lifesaver, and I am eternally grateful to you. My insomnia started way back in 1998, and I was in the United States Army at the time, and I was serving in an infantry unit, and I was a paratrooper. So training was incredibly challenging all of the time. And every month or every 3 months, I don't remember which, we would get up at 4 a.m. and we would conduct a 12-mile ruck march with all of our gear, camouflage, the whole kit and caboodle. And this is grueling because it's not only, you're not only wearing 80 to 100 pounds of equipment, you're also marching at 4 miles an hour through the sandhills of North Carolina. And that, if you've ever hiked through sandhills, you know that every step you take forward, you take about 3/4 of a step back because you slide. So it's incredibly physically demanding. And one night, I can remember for 3 to 4 weeks prior to this, I was having having a hard time sleeping, and it was slowly coming on. So I was taking NyQuil every night to try and, force me to sleep, which I'm sure we'll get to later as a control strategy. But, this night I was so worried, and it was 2 a.m. and I hadn't slept a wink, and I wound up having a panic attack. And from that night forward, it just wasn't the same. That is that was the trigger. That was a defining moment. And I've never understood it, but I went to see an Army psychiatrist after that. And he put me on trazodone, which I know there's a lot of talk about trazodone on your channel and in all these wonderful personal stories. And let me see, I would have been 20 years old or so. And trazodone, 200 milligrams, completely knocked me out. I was dead to the world for 7 to 8 hours. So it worked incredibly well. I got out of the military and I went on with my life. I went, got an undergraduate degree. I went and got a graduate degree. And, over the years, the trazodone worked 99% of the time. But I had become dependent on it, right? So I'd have times where, I wasn't sure the pharmacy would be able to fill it in time for me to take it. And so I would get, very frightened about not having it. Because after years of suffering from this, you kind of convince yourself that you can't sleep and you don't sleep. And these are reinforced by, being very tired and laying down on the couch in the evening and not being able to sleep, or trying to nap and just simply not being able to sleep. So, I was completely dependent upon it, but it worked. And so I had, resigned myself to the fact at the time that I just had insomnia and that I just couldn't sleep without medication. And
at this time, sorry to interrupt, but during these years, you had, the idea was sort of like, I have this thing called insomnia, so I can't sleep without trazodone, but that's just the way it is. And was that, did you sort of, you didn't think much about it as long as you had your trazodone, you were kind of living your life, or was it still kind of worse in your background? Not so much, it sounds like.
No, not at all. Great question. I didn't ever think about it. If someone asked me, I would actually joke about it. They'd say, don't fall asleep while you're driving at night. I say, well, that's impossible. I have insomnia, so that could never happen, right? Or they say, don't, go home and take a nap. And I'd say, well, I can't nap because I have insomnia, so I would need medication. So no.
So you had these ideas, but basically there were not really any worries because you knew as long as I have the trazodone, it's okay.
As long as I had the trazodone, I was fine. And I always had the trazodone, so I was always okay. Fast forward a little bit, I'm going to skip a lot of time there. And I was doing some postdoctoral work at the University of Chicago. And, at that time, I finally had the resources and the freedom to go seek good medical care. So I went to see a sleep doctor. And at this time, I was struggling with sleep, although it didn't frighten me. There was no fear behind it. I just didn't like it. Right. So I would, probably 4 to 5 hours a night, waking up a number of times. But, I was still able to function the next day, no problem. And I went to see this sleep doctor, wonderful woman. And she started me on CBT-I. And as you well know, and as I've heard many times on your channel, people struggle with CBT-I, except it worked for me. And it worked really, really well. So I would, challenge my thoughts with my thought logs every night, and I would write them out and I would reframe them. And I think at this time she put me on, so I was on trazodone and she put me on Lyrica, which is kind of a strange sleeping pill, obviously off label. And I was also given a small dose of a benzodiazepine. And those 3 medications helped me sleep, but the goal was to get off of the medications. So over the course of probably 4 to 5 months, I was, and obviously I was forcing sleep deprivation, right? Which is not fun. But over the course of 4 to 5 months, I was able to slowly build up that sleep drive. And I was able to eliminate 2 medications and get down to 50 milligrams of trazodone, which I was elated about. I had no idea that, and then I had some hope, right? Except that when I got down to 50 milligrams of trazodone, I stopped seeing the doctor. I stopped practicing CBT, and I reverted back to having to take 200 milligrams of sleep again. But I think that, listening to you and so many of your little snippets online and listening to what other people say, I think that CBT-I worked for me because I was not yet scared of the next day, right? I didn't like having trouble sleeping. I was tired a lot, but I was never worried about my performance the next day or my health, or, I wasn't paying attention to all these, articles and things that you read about the effects of sleep deprivation, right, on dementia and Alzheimer's, and, shorten your life by 20 years and, so on and so forth. So I think that CBT-I worked because I was not scared of the next day. At that point, I was back on 200 milligrams of trazodone, and I was sleeping reasonably well. So fast forward, I got a couple of jobs, worked a couple jobs. I wound up getting out of the field I was in, which was geophysics, and I got into finance. I don't know how that happened. That's a whole nother can of worms. But we're going to fast forward again, and we're going to fast forward to 2020 or 2021. And, a lot of this time is very, very hazy for me. And trazodone was continuing to work well. By this time, I'd been on it for at least 20 years, maybe 1 or 2 years more. And one night, I slept 7.5 hours, got up, went to work the very next night. And just as a caveat, I had been under an immense amount of stress for a couple years due to an issue that I was facing outside of work, and just kind of a personal issue. And then one night, I just didn't sleep. And I didn't sleep at all, not a wink, not 2 minutes. And I remember opening my eyes after trying to sleep all night, right? After forcing myself to sleep all night. And, it was 7 or 7:30, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified of not being able to sleep, because in my mind, insomnia was back, and it was back with a vengeance. And this began years of suffering, the extent to which I can't even put into words. But this began a approximately 3 to 4 year journey of just absolute suffering. And I'll just, maybe not briefly, but I'll just summarize, some of the things that I was experiencing at this time. I have just some notes here because there's, so much that I want to say, but I tend to forget things. So obviously when people are suffering, they want to fix it, right? So the first thing that I did trying to fix it is I went to my psychiatrist and I said, help me sleep. And this started probably 1 year to 2 years of trying medication combinations, none of which worked. But at my peak, and I was on 4 medications. So I was on trazodone, mirtazapine, Valium, and Lunesta, all at the same time, for over 3 years.
And was it that, sorry, Daniel, but was it that like when a medication was introduced, kind of like the first night you might sleep a little more, but or not really? Like it seemed like they didn't impact you at all.
So there would, and that's another great question. I think that when I first started taking them, I would see a small increase in sleep because, along with starting a new medication, there's a little bit of hope involved with that, right? So, a new pill. Oh, I'm going to sleep really well because I have this new pill, and it's going to make me very drowsy, and I'm going to sleep through the night. But to your point, absolutely. I saw a very small increase in sleep, and then 2 or 3 days later, back to baseline, right? Yeah. Back to, just absolute baseline. So we tried, Seroquel, we tried, all of these off-label drugs. No drug combinations worked. And eventually, my psychiatrist said, there's nothing else that I can do. We're just going to have you keep you here and, try a different avenue. I said, okay. And I'm almost hesitant to mention this, but I was so desperate to sleep that I discovered phenibut, which is I'm sure you know what that is.
Actually, I don't. When you tell me more, I'll probably know. But what is phenibut?
Phenibut is a chemical compound. They use it in Russia, and it's prescribed for anxiety and insomnia. It acts just like a benzodiazepine does on the brain.
Oh, okay.
So it has the same addictive effects, right? But it also has the same benzodiazepine effects. So I was taking those 4 medications in addition to the phenibut, in addition to a double dose of ZQuil every night. And that's 6, right? I mean, I was so desperate, and I still was not sleeping well. But having these medications on hand gave me, this kind of safety blanket, right? And I wound up taking ZQuil and phenibut for an extended period of time, and they worked their way into my system, and I had to work my way off of them, right, by gradually reducing the dose. And there were all kinds of side effects with taking ZQuil for a long time, because that's an anti-cholinergic.
Yeah, it's like an antihistamine, right?
Yeah, and you can't, take that for, months and years at a time without some serious side effects.
And at this time, I'm guessing that you're quite anxious and quite worried during the day as well. Tell us a little bit about that, and also, like, how are you functioning daytime?
So that's a great question too. So I developed this brain fog, right? I had no idea where it came from, but I was always just foggy. I would get confused. I would get confused writing sentences on a keyboard. I would get confused writing. I would get confused reading, and I would, sometimes I would see a word and it would just, I don't know what that word is. And then a moment later, oh, that's what that word is. And yes, I had absolutely debilitating anxiety because I was scared that I was going to die. And oh gosh, that was hard. And that went on for 3 years or so. I was always lethargic, right? I never had any energy. I was constantly late to work because I thought that, sleeping in when I really wasn't sleeping, but I thought that sleeping in would help me regain, some of this energy and, make up for some of the lost time. So I would always try it, but it would never work. I fell into a very, very deep depression, very dark state. And I mean, I was in seriously bad mental shape. I know that I've heard this from a lot of your other personal stories too, but on your channel, that people felt, I was having suicidal thoughts. I was convinced that I was either going to die from lack of sleep, or that I had some terminal disease that just couldn't be identified, right? And I was just going to die from that. So to me, I only had a couple years left, if that. If I was lucky. My thoughts were scary, all of them, right? It didn't matter if I thought of, an elephant. I would have a thought pop into my mind and it would just terrify me. So every thought I had was just absolutely, absolutely terrifying. And I was in this state where I was scared to be awake, right? But I was also scared to try and sleep, because every time I laid my head down on the pillow, my brain would just go crazy, and I would just be absolutely terrified. It wouldn't matter how tired I was, right? As soon as that head hit the pillow, the anxiety would just jump through the roof. I was having heart palpitations, sweating, just cold a lot. And mind you, this was 2 to 3 years of this experience like this. Yeah. And, frankly, I don't know how I survived, but that fear spilled over into every aspect of my life. So I was scared to go out. I was scared to talk to people. I was, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but everything in my life was about sleep. I formed my entire existence around sleep. So, every other thought I had was about, am I going to sleep tonight? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I going to die? it consumed everything. I stopped going out. I stopped calling people on the phone. I stopped interacting with friends, social media, everything. It was just about sleep. And, this is when you try and control everything, right? Because you think there's a problem. So I would try and control every aspect of my life. And like many of your listeners that I tried, I mean, the list of things I've tried would probably encompass, 5 to 10 single space pages. Sleeping upside down in bed, new pillows, new sheets, new mattress, scented oil therapy. I tried the apps. I tried blackout curtains. I tried sleep masks. I tried meditation. I tried, that aromatherapy. I tried every OTC supplement I could find. The lavender, the melatonin, absolutely everything. I tried progressive muscle relaxation. I tried EMDR. I tried the therapy where I think Fisher Wallace makes the stimulator.
Oh yeah.
I do like a
Yeah.
microcurrents. I tried that for many months to try and relieve the anxiety and the depression and, the insomnia. I did a whole round of ketamine therapy for a year. Nothing helped. And so I set rules for myself, right? I had to go to bed at this time. I had to turn out all of the lights at this time. I couldn't look at this screen. I couldn't look at that screen. I completely changed my diet. I tried lactose free. I tried gluten free. I tried only eating chicken and broccoli for 3 weeks. Daniel, if it existed, I tried it as a solution and nothing worked. I bought, probably 4 pair of those blue blocking sunglasses, and I would just wear those at night. Heck, I even tried to turn music on very loud to try and, take my mind off of things, but, nothing worked. And I would, because of the anxiety, because of the stress, I was having these wild physical symptoms. I would fade in and out of consciousness for probably a second or two, multiple times per day. I saw hypnotherapists. I would get tingles. I would get numbness. I would get muscle cramps. I would get, pain in my joints. I would have twitching eyes. I would have, some of my hair started to fall out. It was the most intense suffering I think that I have ever endured. And I can't, I have trouble now looking at some of your clients' videos because I'm so empathetic that, I feel for them so much. And, I'm not coming to you as a person who's still struggling. I wanted to wait about 6 months and get through your program and develop, better sleep before I came to you. So, I'm just going to stop there with the history of it and what I experienced. And then I will go into, what I did for the solution. If you don't have any more questions.
Yeah, no, I think thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing that. Like you share this in a very powerful way. It's very clear how difficult things were, trying all these things. And when the psychiatrist says like, there's nothing left I can do at this point and things of that nature, we can only imagine how difficult things were. So I'd say just basically take us kind of next chronologically, like what happens next?
So this is actually pretty funny. And unlike a lot of your clients, I am not a great storyteller, but I will try.
I kind of disagree with that because I think it's wonderful. But anyway,
I will try and make my way through this. So I became so desperate that I thought there had to be an answer out there. And at this point in my life, I had read a lot of self-help books, and I had read a lot of books about sleep and insomnia. Nothing ever helped me. So I went on Amazon and I ordered Chris Winter's book.
The Sleep Solution.
The Sleep Solution, yeah. And I got it, and it sat on my shelf for 3 days. And I remember struggling with sleep one night, and I just looked at the book, and I got up and I just threw it away. I was like, there's nothing in this book that's going to help me. I am done. I am resigned to a life of suffering and misery. I am done. So fast forward a few months, I read some more reviews on it. I was like, okay, well, maybe this should be helpful. So then I ordered it again. And I read it. And I actually had a therapy session with him as well. But his book was the very beginning of my journey of healing from insomnia. And up to this point, I had always viewed insomnia as sleep deprivation or a lack of sleep or just not being able to sleep. And in his book, and you probably know this already, but for anybody who doesn't, Dr. Chris Winter identifies insomnia, or he defines it as two things having to be true for you to suffer from insomnia. One is you have to care. You have to care a whole lot. And two, you are not sleeping when you think you should be sleeping. So insomnia is not sleep deprivation or lack of sleep. It was redefined for me in that way. And that kind of started to, there was like a dim light bulb that kind of started to become bright in my brain. And in another part of his book, I think he uses larger font, and it just says insomnia is fear. And I picked that up and something clicked, and I said to myself, yes, that's true. Okay. But I don't get that, right? I knew that the idea was there and it was a solid idea, but I didn't quite understand where he was going with that. And I read the rest of the book and nothing changed, but it sort of laid the foundation for me. Not too soon after that, I was perusing YouTube and I saw Sasha Stevens' video on your channel. And I don't know what made me watch it, but her interview is just fantastic. She is an amazing human being in person, very, very brave. And after listening to her story, I started to, and by this time in my life, I was out of hope and I was out of anything positive. But watching her and her genuineness and her sincerity and even some of her intensity, showed me that, okay, well, this person was experiencing something just like I was. And she got through it. So, I don't know where the answer is yet, but I know that a path exists. I don't know where that path is. So that was very eye-opening for me. The next thing that happened was I ordered Guy Meadows' book. And I think that these are very common steps among people who follow your channel, right? Like they all read Guy Meadows' book. They've all seen Sasha Stevens' video or read her book. I also read her book. But Guy Meadows' approach to, one of the side effects of this severe insomnia was anxiety. And I was constantly beleaguered by this just debilitating anxiety. And, almost sent me to the hospital a number of times. But after having him explain how to handle the anxiety, saying hi to it, welcoming it, giving it a form, or a name, sort of. So after that, I started to play around with this in my head. And every time I felt anxiety, I would imagine anxiety. I would imagine myself in my own home, and I would imagine a knock on the door, right? And I would open the door and the person would say, and it was always a man, and I don't know why, but anxiety would show up as a human being. And I would welcome him in. I would give him a hug and I would say, feel free to hang around for a while if you want to. And then he would say something like, okay, I'm going to bring my friend Fear along too, right? So then I would welcome Fear into my front door and I would hug them. And I would just imagine myself sitting around a table, spending time with them, commiserating, whatever it was. I also used one of his ideas of imagining these, anxiety and fear and anything else I felt as being stage characters and, slowly coming onto the stage in this, big, loud, booming megaphone. And here we have anxiety, right? And I'd imagine him all dressed up in a costume. And, I started to kind of giggle at it a little bit, right? I started to find a little bit of humor in it. And so that was a nice relief that I could use. And it does lose its effectiveness over time. So the first time you do it, it just took all my anxiety away, and I was just elated. I was like, wow. But each additional time, it became less effective, but it did give me the tools that I needed to help me deal a little bit with anxiety. And then by that combination, I started to understand the interplay between fear and anxiety, but I didn't have a full understanding yet. Then I discovered your channel. And I don't know how I discovered your channel. I don't remember. But I started to watch your little 10 to 15 minute snippets of knowledge, right? How to leave fear and anxiety behind, or the gas and brake model, right? Or, you have these wonderful short snippets of wisdom. And I started to watch these, and I slowly started to build sort of a library of, Dr. Erickson's, wisdom nuggets in my brain. And then I started watching personal stories. And I got up to watching 2 to 3 per night. So I'd spend anywhere between 2 and 3 hours watching people's personal stories every night. And man, I tell you what, I really connected with some of them. And just to know that there was another person out there who was suffering as much as I was such a relief to know that I wasn't alone. And slowly over the course of months, watching videos, I started journaling. I started carrying a notepad with me, and I started writing down these, knowledge nuggets, every time I'd think of them or anytime I learned them, and I would just review them every night, right? So I would review like your gas and brake model, right? I would review, anything that I learned from you on the channel. And very, very slowly, this base of knowledge started to build. And you really, more than once, I think I've seen you highlight the importance of self-education, how important it is. And self-education was the key for me to start healing from this insomnia. So the more I watched, the more I wrote things down, the more I started to change my thoughts, the better I started to feel. Now, I still wasn't sleeping very well, but I think there were a number of important things I learned from you. One was, focusing on the involuntary nature of sleep. This is a point that you highlight. And up to this point, I had been trying to sleep. And I think you even say it in one of your videos. What do great sleepers do to sleep at night? Nothing. They don't do anything. And that was like that was an explosion, right? I had no idea. And that just made sense. And I really started to understand hyperarousal by watching your videos, and what hyperarousal was, and how it interrupted the what am I trying to think of? The sleep drive, right? And one thing that really hit me was that, and I think you explained this, your brain cannot tell the difference between a grizzly bear and a perceived threat of not being able to sleep. Who knew, right? I certainly didn't. But that was such a good nugget of information. I was like, oh, that makes sense. No wonder I'm hyper aroused. My brain thinks there's a grizzly bear standing right in front of me, and there's not, right? Let me see here. And, wakefulness was another big part that I learned from you, and embracing wakefulness. I never thought of this before, right? I just, I was always scared of being awake. I was terrified of being awake. But you said to embrace wakefulness, and that wakefulness was the only path to sleeping. And so I said, okay, well, that makes perfect sense to me. Let's go ahead and try that. So I started to form my thoughts around, instead of, how can I shorten what I do during the day to prepare for sleep, to what can I do, right? I have this time. What can I do with it? Yes, I feel terrible. Yes, I am suffering a lot, but seriously, what can I do with this time? And these things, they started to change the way that I thought. And another thing that helped me a lot was becoming aware of all of the ways that I tried to control sleep, from turning the lights out early to blocking blue light to putting the screens. And I even got down to, so even having the thought that, oh gosh, Daniel, it's 11 o'clock. You might want to get in bed to get enough sleep for the next day. That's in and of itself is an effort to control sleep. And so I started becoming more aware of these things. I started to notice them, and then I started to get rid of them, right? It's like, no, that's not a helpful thought, right? That's not going to help me at all. Go away. And, not being attached to the outcome. I was always attached to the outcome. But, and that goes hand in hand with set it and forget it, right? So I put my alarm clock in another room. I would set the alarm at 10 o'clock. I would go sit on the couch. No idea what time it was. And it felt great. It felt absolutely great. And it scared me a lot at first, but then I started to get used to it. And that started to change the way that I approached sleep at night. I also eliminated all of not only my mental language around insomnia, but my verbal language as well. Because for the last 15 to 20 years, I always told people I couldn't sleep. Always. Say, well, how'd you sleep last night? Well, I didn't. That was the standard answer for the past few years. Or, maybe you should go take a nap. Well, I can't do that because I can't sleep without medication. So I eliminated that. So even though I was having trouble sleeping, if somebody asked me how I was feeling, I would say, great. I had a full 8 hours, no problem. Feel fantastic. And that's faking it till you make it. And that actually works in other aspects of life as well. And slowly, I think that, and I'll just stop very soon here, all of these things added up, right? So back to your insistence on self-knowledge. When you take all of these things into account, and these things, they build on each other. And as you learn and as you reinforce these things, they start to change your manner of thinking, and that changes your behavior. And very, very slowly, I started to disassociate myself from insomnia. I always viewed it as like an integral part of who I was, right? Hey, there's Daniel. He's an insomniac. Well, no, that's not true, right? But I always knew that. I always believed that. And I got rid of that too. Now, so let me go back. I was momentarily confused on where to go, but I sent you an email on June the 29th of 2024. And I thanked you profusely. I told you saved my life, which you did. Absolutely. Because I knew it was going to end. I was convinced it was either going to be by suicide or by insomnia, right? I was absolutely convinced of that. So, I sent you this email when I was still struggling with sleep, but after I had discovered all these wonderful things from the books and especially your channel. So at that point, I knew there was a solution. I hadn't implemented it yet, and it wasn't paying dividends yet, but I knew, just intuitively knew that was the answer. And I was going to ask you to do this interview then, and I thought, you know what, let me give it 6 months and see how this works. If I would have talked to you 6 months ago, it would have gone a bit differently, because I still would have been absolutely elated that I could sleep again. I still am, but new things always have a shiny sheen to them, and then they start to wear off after a little while. So today, I don't think about sleep. I don't worry about sleep. I have no idea how many hours I slept last night. I don't care. I don't pay attention to what time I go to bed. I don't turn any lights out. I don't avoid TV. I don't avoid activities. I sleep very, very well, and almost every night. Yes, there's the occasional night where I'll get 4 or 5 hours, or I'll wake up 5 or 6 times. It's fine. I wake up and I don't even think about it anymore. It's just, hey, you're tired. Great. Being tired actually feels good because I know I'm going to sleep well that night, right? And that hyper arousal has been removed from me, and that fear has evaporated. It's gone. And it's only through the amount of work I did with self-education and putting that into action that has gotten me to this point. So, if you're a listener and you are struggling, I empathize with you. I can't say that I'm struggling any more or less than you did, but I certainly empathize with you and I feel for you. And, there is a solution out there, and this is only temporary, and you will sleep again. So
Wow.
anyway, the last thing I wanted to mention is that just a month or two ago, dreams started to come back. And I hadn't had consistent dreams since I was probably 14 years old. Maybe that was due to the medication. I don't know. But, back in November, after 4 or 5 months of sleeping pretty well, the dreams started to come back and the emotions started to come back. And I'm feeling normal. I don't have a lethargy. I don't have the brain fog. I'm sharp. I'm focused. I don't worry about being bored. I actively embrace wakefulness. So with that, I will end there and answer any questions you have. But I just, one more time, thank you so much for everything that you do for people who suffer from insomnia. I cannot express to you how grateful I am for you and everything that you do. The videos, the knowledge snippets, the immunity program, working with people, being patient, being kind, being understanding. I'm beside myself with gratitude. So thank you.
No, thank you, Daniel. Like, what you just said, I know I speak for all of us coaches that we live to hear what you just said, that what we teach has been so helpful. So that just means the world. And maybe I have two kind of like standard last questions that I'm saving, but also it sounds like you talked about self-education, which I 100% believe in that. And it's almost like every little thing we learn is a piece in the puzzle, and when it's completed, like the result, if you will, we truly see, not only intellectually but fully internally and experientially, is that there was never anything wrong with us, and we're safe. There's no danger or threat. And then of course everything just falls apart, like the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors. It's like we're free, right? Something like that is how I see it. But I wanted to ask you, you decided to join the immunity program. Was that because you wanted to maybe hear from other people's stories, or for educational purposes, or tell us a little bit about why you joined and how you found that experience to be?
So first of all, great point, which is something I did not mention, but you're right. I look back now and I think, how silly was I to have all this fear? And I'm not trying to downplay insomnia to anyone, but as you said, you come to figure out that there was never anything wrong with you at all. It's almost like a mirage, right? You just had this brief time in your life, maybe not so brief for some people like me, where you struggled, and then you figure it out, and there was nothing actually there. So thank you for pointing that out. I found the can't even talk today. I found the Insomnia Immunity program. I think your reply to me in your email contained the Insomnia Immunity program, or I think it was mentioned in one or more of people's personal stories that you publish on YouTube. And I was going through this process of, learning from you and watching religiously, 7 days a week, every night. And I knew that I needed another component for reference. And I actually used the Insomnia Immunity program to ask a few questions. And they were answered wonderfully by your sleep coaches and even other people. But, I can only get so much from videos, and I got a lot from the videos, but the ability to be able to read people's stories and hear about their progress. I got it, and I didn't know that then, but I know this now. I got it so I could witness people's progress, right? Witnessing somebody's progress is it's absolutely priceless. It is, you'd have somebody who'd say, they were kind of starting their journey out, and they'd say something like, "Oh, I can notice a little bit of a difference," or, "Hey, I slept well for the past 3 nights, and then I had a speed bump." And I didn't talk about speed bumps, and I didn't talk about closing the hood. Both, I did close the hood a couple times, and I had numerous speed bumps. That's just a part of healing. But it especially became important when I was dealing with the speed bump, right? Because I did have 4 nights of sleep soon after I started, and I closed the hood, and I said, "Okay, that's it." And then the 5th night, nothing. And then I turned on one of your videos. I was like, "Oh, closing the hood. Oh, let me check out what people have to say about this." So I'd search the immunity program. And, sure enough, if you're looking for a subject, you can find it there. I think the coaches do a wonderful job, but part of my experience was just always feeling so alone and always being so fearful. Never once did it enter my mind that, oh gosh, there's got to be 100,000 more people around the world who feel just like I do. I had no idea. I thought I was the only one, right? And to read all of these people online struggling with the same thing was just miraculous. It gave me so much comfort. And gosh, I'm about to cry, I think. It just helped transform my life. So it was just another tool to use. But it got me in touch with people in real time. And that was incredibly important.
No, thanks for sharing that, Daniel. And I wanted to ask you about that because I think, learning simply by reading and watching videos passively, that it can be wonderful and it can be all that you need. But oftentimes it can be a lonely journey, and just sharing with some people and learning together can be super powerful. So I want to mention that. But with that said, 2 more questions. One is, if you could travel back in time and tell yourself something when you were really struggling, what would you pick?
Something about fear. So fear was the one thing. It was at the core of this entire thing was just fear. It was terrifying. I mean, the fear was so intense sometimes. It felt like I could, pick up a bucket full and, it was so I would say that if I had to go back and tell myself something, I would say one of 2 things. And these are not my original ideas. These are just things that I've heard from other people in other places. I would say, one, that fear does not stop death. It doesn't eliminate death. Fear stops life from occurring, right? And if I would have known that back when all of this started, I would have had a completely different trajectory. And also, I would also tell myself, I'd say, "Hey, Daniel, listen, everything that you want, including healing from insomnia, including sleeping well, lies on the other side of fear." And if I would have been told those 2 things, I think I would have been okay. Because it would have given me some idea that, because when you're in this, like many of your guests say, you can't tell a square from a circle, right? You're just in the middle of this thing, and you're so confused, so you don't recognize the fear, right? You can't look at it objectively and say, "Well, that doesn't belong there. That's fake." So yeah, it would just be about fear.
Oh, that's great. So nice. So nicely put. And finally, are there some things, outside of sleeping
Oh boy.
easier and leaving the sleep struggle? Have you found that what you learned going through this struggle and learning has helped in other areas of life?
I think that learning this has helped me in every other aspect of my life. I think that, first of all, learning about fear, right? This is the first chance I've had at, I'm 46 now. This is the first chance I've had to really experience and overcome fear. Sure, when I was a kid, I was terrified of roller coasters. And, my father, despite my crying and, flipping out, threw me on a roller coaster. And, that fear was fixed after that. But it gave me a chance to deal with fear in a healthy way. And now when I'm doing other things in life, if I'm hesitant to make a decision, if I'm trying to decide between two things, and there's some fear there, I pick it up, like immediately. Like, okay, that's fear. Is it valid? No. Fear is useful, but, not. So that too, but more importantly, I think my self-awareness and my emotional intelligence has grown so much. And I mean, I can't tell you I mean, the amount that I've learned just in the past year from this has been more than I've probably ever learned in that same time period in my life. I mean, I've grown so much emotionally from this. I've learned about control, and I've learned to let go, which comes, it's useful in every aspect of life, learning to let go. It gives the serenity prayer new meaning, right? If you're familiar with that. But yeah, no, I mean, I can't express the gratitude that I have for this in the amount that I've grown personally. I mean, I thought for over 20 years, I thought that I was stricken with insomnia and I was going to live like that for the rest of my life. And I knew that was true. And I knew it was true, except it wasn't. And, I mean, gosh, Daniel, I just, yes. Thank you again. From the bottom.
Like what you said there, perfect place to end our amazing interview, because that's exactly what we hope for everyone who finds us, is that not only can you find a way to like leave the struggle with sleep, but learn things that like really make life in general so much easier and lighter. So thanks so much for Daniel for being a guest, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.
See you.
Hi there, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope it is obvious to you to what degree we at the Sleep Coach School really try to put out content that will help you on your path to peaceful sleep and peace of mind. And I hope you really enjoyed the video that you just watched. Now, some people don't learn the best by watching videos, but rather by reading. And I wanted to share a little tip with you. The books that most people really talk about having helped them is This Is Nato and Set It and Forget It. But I think most people miss out on my personal favorite, which is Tales of Courage. All of my books are available on Amazon. But Tales of Courage is special because in Tales of Courage, we've taken 26 success stories from the channel, and we've taken sort of the most powerful language, the most inspirational and educational parts of those interviews, and put them in a book. And I think it is really, really so strong, so powerful when you read those words from other people who left the struggle. And that's my little tip to you. Tales of Courage, I think, is a great book, and it's available on Amazon, of course. So if that's appealing to you, you can head over there and get a copy. But more than anything else, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel, and can't wait to see you again. Bye for now.